Hey, good morning. It's Pastor Jeff with your Sunday morning message. Thank you so much for tuning in with us here at Freedom Church. If you're old enough, you have at some point heard a dialogue on the radio by Paul Harvey. It's a segment that would come on, and it was called, he would say, "And now the rest of the story." And then at the end, he would say, "And now you know the rest of the story. Good day." He told you parts of the story that no one knows. He would find stories about inventors, creators, famous people, all different types of things, and find out parts of the story that no one knew. And he would research them, and then he would share those things. He told you things that you would never know ever existed outside of him telling the story. So in our text today, Paul, the apostle, is flipping the script and switching gears and going into the next chapter of Philippians. We've done the first two chapters of Philippians. Now we're rolling into chapter 3, and he's going to tell us the rest of the story. Because in the first two chapters, we've seen Paul as he commended the Philippians for how they cared for him. We heard his prayer for him. We heard how invested he felt like they were. He has given them some instructions for living and has just informed them that he is going to send Timothy and Epaphroditus to visit them. When he says, "Finally, brethren," he says it two different times in this book. It means, the word is translated furthermore. So he's closing one subject and rolling to the next. So now he's going to tell us the rest of the story based on concerning our outlook, thinking about your outlook. We are told to rejoice. In this chapter, he says, rejoice. We seem to have difficulty in this area in life. The Bible says in Matthew 22:14, "For many are called, but few are chosen." Why don't we rejoice? Why don't we spend more time rejoicing the way Paul says that we should? Paul's rejoicing. Paul is talking about having joy while chained to a guard, locked up in jail, locked up in prison for doing what God had called him to do. Share the gospel. The problem is that we focus on all the negative and we rarely look at the positives. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I'll be the first to tell you that. So when my kids are involved in a sport of some sort, all I can see is the mechanics. Everything's in slow motion. When they're swinging a bat, it's in slow motion to me. When they're throwing a ball, when they're fielding a ball, when they're pitching, whatever it is, it's all in slow motion to me. Bray's doing gymnastics now, and I know just enough to be dangerous. I don't know how to coach it, and I don't know how to do the things they're doing, but I know the proper way to do it, and I see the mistakes. I see the mechanics. Sadly, that's just how I'm wired. So when I coach a high school team, I see the same things. And I have to be careful to make sure I bring up the good stuff too. The positives mixed in, or I'll end up getting tuned out. Coach Sapp used to say, no matter how bad of a day a kid had, give them a positive. If all you can tell them is that they tied their shoes well today, then tell them how well they tied their shoes today. We got to learn to do that. We've got to learn to look at the positives. And one of the reasons Paul is telling us to rejoice here is because God doesn't see just our imperfections. He sees us as who we were created to be. Because remember, we're looking at the rest of the story. So this has been addressed before, and it will be mentioned again in chapter 4. Back in Philippians 1:18, he says, "But what does it matter? The important thing is that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is preached, and because of this, I rejoice, yes, and I will rejoice." Paul doesn't care about the motives. He cares about the substance. If the gospel, if the good news that God loves them unconditionally and that Jesus died on the cross for them and rose again, if that's being proclaimed, that's all he cares about. So there's two lessons in this. First, we need to rejoice that God can override prison and poor motives to advance his cause. God uses every single part of every single person who loves him to advance his cause. Our mess is God's message. And that God uses someone like me is mind-boggling and humbling. God uses everything we do for the advancement of his plans. Secondly, we have to value the truth of the gospel even more highly than we value the attitudes of the people who share it. This one's a little tougher at times. We have all at some point in our lives had to deliver a message to someone knowing they're not going to have a good reaction. What do we start the conversation with? Don't shoot the messenger. What we mean is in that moment, we don't want any credit for the blame, or we don't want to get in the middle or in the crossfire. We are just simply sharing the message. We're only saying it because someone's making us say it or because it has to be said. We are not the source of it. So we've got to have the exact same attitude about the gospel. We have to esteem the message more than the messenger. I don't preach from a stage or stand on a stage. Even when I speak in auditoriums at high schools about dating violence, I'm on the floor talking. Here, I choose to be here because I am no better than anyone else in that room. Please, please, please let me point you to Jesus and never to me. I want to be the messenger, but I want Jesus to be at the center. So instead of don't shoot the messenger, in this case it would be don't put the messenger anywhere close to the message, because they are not one and the same. Philippians 2:2 says, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and purpose. Same mind in Greek is alte phreneite. One mind in Greek is en phreneutes, nuntes. They both start with the same phrase, but yet they're quite different. And one thing we need to know is there is no English counterpart to these two Greek words. So it doesn't really say or mean mind or one mind or same minds. It means same attitude. You see, we can have the same mind. We can like the same football team. We can cheer for the same college sports teams. We can like the same kind of music. What is needed as a church is far greater than just sameness. It means having the same framework for deciding our perception and our attitude toward things. Philippians 2:18 says, so you too should be glad and rejoice in me. And then Philippians 4:4, rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. You may say, I can't rejoice. But remember, you're not rejoicing for yourself or about yourself. The verse says to rejoice in the Lord. The reason many people can't rejoice is because they're missing God in the equation. Not only does Paul give us the rest of the story concerning our outlook, he gives us the rest of the story concerning our opposition. Those who are against us. We're going to face opposition as Christians. Being a Christian does not make life simple or smooth. I can tell you that 110%. We have to be cautious and on guard against the enemy because our opposition is destructive. We have to beware of dogs. Paul's not talking about your friendly lab or your hound dog. He's describing something more along the lines of a pack of wild dogs. Those who are out for themselves, destroying everything in their path. There are all sorts of groups of people who fit this description. First group is people who get involved in things but complain every time it doesn't go their way. They get involved and, man, I'll be the first one there, the last to leave, I'll do everything, but things better go my way. I better get my way. The second group of people are people who get involved and they do things, but they get their feelings hurt if they don't get credit. You'll never hear me take credit for anything. Actually, when I coach high school softball, I tell the girls all the time, when we win, they get all of the credit, and when we lose, I take all of the blame. That's the only thing I'm taking credit for, and that's the way it should be. The third group of opposition is people who do nothing and complain about how things are done. They show up, they're there, they do nothing to help, they do nothing to make anything any better, and they complain about how it gets done. And the fourth group is people who believe that they can do anything to earn their salvation. They do good things, but it's a badge of honor for them. They wear it around many times to hide some secret sin or some mistake that they've made. In these verses, Paul talks about mutilators of the flesh, and he's referring to different surgical procedures that were done to prove that someone was religious. Paul's simply pointing out all that was wrong with believers in those times. They thought they had to go through certain rituals to be saved. They were grasping religion. He's referring to false teachers as well, leaders in churches who were just doing it for their own profit and their own gain, to gain popularity or notoriety or to make a lot of money. He's also working hard to do away with religion completely. No membership, no ritual, no amount of service or giving will get you a relationship with Jesus. Religion always starts with this sentence: Go do. You need to do. Jesus starts all of his sentences with, it's done. It's been done. Our opposition is depraved. Verse 2 says, beware of evil workers. There are going to be a lot of good people who live quite contrary to what God has designed them for. They say one thing, but their actions are nowhere close to aligning. They say that they're a believer, but you don't see them at church. They say they're a Christian, but they put everything ahead of what God would have them to do. They say that they believe in Jesus, but their actions, their language, and their hobbies tell you otherwise. They've put things ahead of God that let you know that they are not who they say they are. Don't think for a minute that the people Paul was referring to appeared to be evil. Quite the contrary. They were no doubt very convincing. The same is true today. These people believe in what they say and will not think twice about using the term Christian or the name Jesus to get attention. Our opposition can be so deceiving. It says, beware of the concision. Here Paul describes a group called the Judaizers. Judaizers. They did not deny that faith was essential to salvation, but they emphasized works as a requirement for salvation. Many groups today do the same thing. They use the model of grace plus faith plus works. But I'm sorry, that's not how it works. If you will look at all of the cults, they are based on works and on man's ability to do what they're asked to do, to check the boxes, to check the list, and to earn their salvation. Faith does produce works, but works does not produce salvation. And apparently this group, the Judaizers, were very convincing. If not, Paul wouldn't have even bothered bringing it up. So we've seen the rest of the story considering our outlook. We've seen the rest of the story considering our opposition. Now we want to see the rest of the story concerning our observances. After Paul spent some time describing what was fake, Paul now begins to describe what is real. There were some Christian Jews that insisted that to be a part of the kingdom, that people must observe this physical ordinance, circumcision. This ritual was appointed by God to be the special badge of his chosen people, an abiding sign of their consecration to him. It was established as a national ordinance. Our circumcision is not physical. It has a spiritual meaning. It signifies purification of the heart. Paul is saying that we are the true circumcision. It is spiritual, not physical. The method, Paul says to worship God in spirit. We get through all of this by worshiping God in spirit. See, the Jews' worship involved a special place and a special person. We always have intimate access to God at all times and in all places. People say to me all the time, hey, Jeff, would you say a prayer for me? You have a better connection. The truth is, we all have the exact same connection. I may have more faith in my connection because I use it more often, but we all have the same connection. And what's the mistake? Paul says to have no confidence in the flesh. The mistake is that so many people are trying to earn their salvation or to live good enough to make it to heaven. They're having faith in the works of the flesh. Paul warns about this. Mary Engelbright says this: if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change the way you think about it. You see, the hardest thing about salvation is the work. And what I mean by that is everything in life, every area of life, we are taught things like hard work pays off. It's good. It's too good to be true. Run away. Hard work plus dedication equals success. That is true. We say that in sports, hard work plus dedication equals success. When I teach a young athlete that, I'm not talking about winning a game. And I'm not talking about winning a championship. I'm talking about the hard work and the dedication. I'm talking about the person they're becoming by doing that. I'm talking about who they are becoming through the hard work and through the dedication, and realizing that they will become a better human being because of it. At some point in life, they're going to succeed at something because of the hard work and their dedication. They're going to survive something that others wouldn't because they didn't have something they worked that hard for. Everything is earned, nothing is free. That's what we hear all the time. Yet our salvation was purchased and taken care of for us. And we struggle with it. I had a guy tell me a few weeks ago that he didn't deserve God's love. I didn't even take a breath before I said, neither do I. Nor will I ever. It's the beauty of God. We don't deserve it. We're never going to deserve it. We're going to face all types of opposition. And some of the opposition is going to be people that we think are on our side. People that are distracting us. People that have a calling on their life and step away from it to be a part of a sport or a hobby or to get involved in something. People who walk away from everything. People who step away from the faith. They're going to be some of the best people we'll meet. Some of the best humans we'll meet. They're going to be our opposition. It's not going to be who you think it is. Paul Harvey has a story called If I Were the Devil. And it's pretty cool. And it's pretty true. If you have a chance, go listen to it. It's pretty dead on, pretty spot on. And it was shared in 1965. He said he would turn the churches against one another. He had churches fighting against churches. He would have families fighting against one another. He would have families not even knowing what a family is. We're there. We are there. The church is fighting for its life. Churches, the capital C church, is fighting hard. Things are getting in the way. Things are taking priority. And the gospel isn't getting shared like it should be. Because people are putting other things ahead of it. It's very simple. I read about an instant cake mix that was a huge flop. The instructions on the box said this: all you had to do was add water and bake. And the company couldn't understand why it couldn't sell until their research discovered that the public felt uneasy about the mix because all it required was water. They felt like there had to be more. Apparently, people thought it was too easy. So the company altered the formula and they changed the directions. And it called for adding an egg to the mix in addition to the water. And the idea worked, and sales quadrupled automatically, instantly. Why? Because it seemed too easy. Listen to me. Walking with God is so easy. And if it seems too easy, it's because it is. It's not because it's too good to be true. It's not because you have to do something to earn with it. You just walk with Him. Start with your prayer life. Start having conversations with Him. Start reading your Bible. Walk with Him daily and watch the changes. Have a great day and God bless.